On this week's episode of the Autohaus podcast.
And I must say also, the reason why I haven't seen a Corolla for sale in Sweden, there's 6 Corollas in all of Sweden, and I'm one of the owners. And then there's like 3 other owners. One person owns 3, and there's 2 more. And that's basically how many road cars there is. I believe there's 2 or 3 race cars, and that's it.
This is the Autohaus podcast. We have a guest all the way from Sweden. Could you say your name and tell us what car you drive?
Yeah, so my name's Martin Widlund. I drive a 1984 AE86 11 left-hand drive GTV. So this is originally it's a Denmark car. That's why it's left-hand drive and 11.
Okay, so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Depending on what country you're in around Europe, do cars come left and right-hand drive?
No, I mean, sorry. Yes and no. So, I mean, the UK and Ireland have right-hand drive, but that's not officially Europe, actually. So basically, first of all, I just want to say I'm new to Corollas. So before 2017, I don't know anything about them, but I always appreciated them. But I've deep dived in all aspects since then. But basically, the AE86 has been sold in a number of European countries, Denmark, Finland, Portugal, Italy, I believe, and Germany maybe, but I'm not entirely sure. And basically, they only were sold in left-hand drive 11 hatchback, from what I understand. But perhaps also coupe, but definitely not what's it called, pop-up lights.
Oh.
So. Yeah, but that's what I know. I mean, I do enjoy researching, and that's what I found. But maybe I'm sure there's a lot of other experts which I've archived for 20 years. But that's what I know. Yeah.
Did you say you got your Corolla in 2017?
That's right, 2017. So I bought it. Just tell me how far you want me to go back. But basically, the car is from Denmark, so 84, I guess, and then. It came to Sweden as a project car imported by someone privately. It was not on the road. It's being prepared to be a track car. Someone at that time swapped it with a black top, began to seam weld it, etc., etc. It didn't really see any road use, but there was a registration, but it wasn't really on the road. So 10 years passed. And then in 2015, the owner before me bought it. And that's when he began to a little bit more of a restoration project. He got a decent paint job, made it, he did all the regular maintenance and made it to the car I bought 2 years later, and that's in 2017.
So how did your fascination with Corolla start? How did you even find about this car in the first place?
I guess definitely Gran Turismo. So I mean, I'm born 84. So I grew up. So my teenage years were on PlayStation 1 and 2. So there, and then I found out there was a game called what was it called, Tokyo Extreme Racer, and I'm almost certain that Toyota Corolla was in that. Odd clips back then also from rallying. I remember growing up seeing, I don't know, where was it, TV or the early days of the internet. And then I lived in Japan briefly. I mean, when I say briefly, it was 3 months, but I definitely saw arcades. And that's when Initial D began to come into my radar. So it was these, Initial D rally stage, or I don't know the exact name of it. And then it just kept snowballing. I moved to Australia at one point, and my best friend had a blacktop AW11, and this is just like increasing. The snowball's getting bigger and bigger as it's rolling down the hill, and now it's completely out of control. It's it's taken over my life. I know like the screw sizes for this, that, or that other product, and yeah, it's a deep dive, but it's really wonderful. Yeah,
that's funny. Even no matter what country, I keep hearing this too. It's like So for example, I have a personal customer who said like, yeah, I thought this would be kind of a cool car to get into, but I didn't realize it would be all encompassing. It like took over my life.
Yeah, to be honest, I think we're really lucky to be in the age we are with technology and internet and communities. I know there's a lot of uh, talking about, oh, I wish forums were back, but it's still pretty incredible. I mean, through Instagram and Facebook groups and just Googling, all the forums, from what I can see, still exist. The photos might have been dumped, but there's so much information available. It's almost too easy to have a vintage car. Mind you, the Corolla is so popular, so there actually is products still available. I know other chassis have next to nothing. You have to DIY everything, like make things, which is also nice, but it just slows down the driving or restoration process.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for Corolla owners who have never had another similar vintage chassis, they don't know that there's regular wear and tear parts that are non-existent, where we can still get
Yeah,
some stuff for Corollas, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's so good.
So in 2017, you bought your Corolla. Tell us about that
That's
experience.
Okay, so 2017, I'm at a playground with my kids. So I got two kids. I moved back from Australia a month prior. So there's a huge backstory we can go back from. But I've been in the past 15 years, I've moved 10 times between continents. So there's a bigger picture to this. But basically, I'm at a playground. I have a search code, or like a saved search history. I don't know how you call it, but the typical cars I like with the keywords Cosworth, AE86, RX-7, anything basically 90s or earlier with a manual. And I must tell you, I haven't seen a Corolla for sale in 10 years, 15 years in Sweden because they weren't sold here. So I my phone buzzed. I saw AE86. I said, nah, what? I swiped left, the ad came up. It just had two photos. It was like one three-quarter from the rear. It's a TRD fiberglass wing, red lines. And then the second photo was a black top with trumpets, exposed trumpets. I pressed call immediately.
Oh man.
Seriously, I'm not kidding. I pressed call immediately. My wife's like, "What are you doing on your phone?" My kids are around. I just, I had to do it. And then right there, we talked to the owner. I was the first call. I mean, the ad went up like 30 seconds before. Talked to the guy. He sent me all the videos and photographs. Within that day, I sent him a full deposit on the car. He lives on an island, like a 3-4 hour ferry boat ride away, and I met him that Saturday. um, yeah, that Saturday. So I bought the car basically sight unseen. I mean, he explained to me what he could in photographs, but and I must say, this is the second Corolla I've ever seen in my life. So the first Corolla I saw was 2 years prior in Australia. I remember it vividly. It was Christmas, but it was hot as F outside because the weather is the opposite. It's summer in the winter and winter summer. And I saw also it was a early car. It was a pop-up lights, red lines, and that was the first Corolla I've ever seen in my life. That's aged 30. I think I was 32. Now I'm 36. I'm bad at math, so but yeah.
It's
So
okay.
it's and I must say also the reason why I haven't seen a Corolla for sale in Sweden. There's 6 Corollas in all of Sweden, and I'm one of the owners. And then there's like 3 other owners. One person owns 3, and there's 2 more. And that's basically how many road cars there is. I believe there's 2 or 3 race cars, and that's it. So it's really niche market. I mean, people buy the car, private import, and that's it. You'll get it when you're dead, maybe. Maybe they get buried in it. I don't know. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to drive a Corolla before you bought this one?
Nope. I drove it. I met the guy, 60-year-old, 50, 60-year-old man. So not double my age, but basically my dad. He pulled up. I was in my car with my kid, 2-year-old, and a friend of mine that was kind enough to come with me. I checked out the car, and that's the first time I drove it. And I'm coming from completely stock cars. So previously I had a S2000 AP1 Civic Type R, and then when I was 18 I had a Fox body. But they were all stock, other than like maybe an exhaust. So this car was no insulation, it, blacktop screaming motor. So anyway, the first time I drove this car was the one I bought like 5 minutes after. But yeah, that was the first time. It was so ridiculously, in my opinion, quick. The chassis is so light, incredibly endorphin releasing. The sight, smells, vibrations. I mean, it was completely ridiculous. I bought it. I mean, I drove it home like 30 minutes later. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the chassis being light because we actually corner balanced a EG6 Civic in here, and we found out the Civic, no interior, still weighed like 200 pounds more than a Corolla, which we were shocked.
Wow. Wow, I mean, that's wonderful. I love EG Civics. I would love an EG Civic. So that's really wonderful. I weighed my car. So my car has no power steering, no AC, no anything. It has no insulation with two Recaro seats, no seats in the back. I weighed it at 920 kilo, and I did a conversion today. I think it's just over 2,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, for me, it's incredibly lively. I don't know. It's so much funner to drive quotation mark slower car 10/10 than a 500 horsepower car. For 2 seconds you have your foot down, and then you're there. You're already breaking the limit, the legal limit. In this car, you're also going to break it really quickly, but you get to have your foot down, and the foot down is the exciting part. Yeah.
I think the other part that a lot of people miss in modern cars is like a high rev limit. Like it's always rewarding to hit the limiter, right? When the limiter is all the way, 8, 9,000.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, enjoying the sound. I think we're really, yeah, lucky to be around that these cars exist. It's really, really rewarding to drive and to see and to hear. Yeah.
So the other five, or I guess the other three cars in Sweden, have you got to meet the owners of these cars?
Absolutely. And with technology, it's almost too easy. So the other, there's two other Corollas. They're both Japanese imports. Whereas mine been a Denmark import. The other owner lives relatively close to me out of all chances. I mean, Sweden is a country. I mean, it's only 10 million people, but it's still a country. The guy could have lived anywhere. He lives like 10 minutes from me. So it's a silver top, silver, also I think 83, 84 Sprinter. So silver top, and also bought from someone on an island between Finland and Denmark. He wasn't looking for Corollas. It came up, he bought it, kind of sight unseen. So it's kind of funny how that it's like a repeating story. And the other Corolla in Stockholm, so I live in Stockholm, is the capital of Sweden, is a complete Initial D replica, and that's restored to be that. So the guy brought it over himself via an importer. I would say between 5 to 10 years ago, did a complete restoration, and he has a black top. So we are two black tops in all of maybe Scandinavia, that have Corollas with black top.
I know before this, you told me that in Sweden, it's the largest concentration of US muscle cars outside of Europe, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Like there's a summer meet that happens. Okay, never mind now this year, Corona, whatever. But other years, it's like this is just one meet. There's other ones, but like 30,000 US cars show up to a meet. The market here is ridiculous. I mean, I think it's post-war. People started, I don't know, some dealers started selling them. People private import them. There's just a lot of, yeah, love for American cars. I mean, that era, American music. I mean, I guess everywhere really, but it's definitely here.
Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I guess just pop culture. I mean, burgers, drive-in. I mean, this exists here. Like, I mean, there's their own burger chains. the dream, you know, three on the stick or whatever you call it, hot rodding. I mean, the roads, it's like country roads. Mind you, they're not straight here, so they are curvy, and that's why it's great to have a, a sports car, I think, here. But kind of long distances between towns. So the size of Sweden, I researched, it's the same physical landmass almost as California, but it has like 1/8 the population. So people are relatively spread out if you're not in the capital or like the main city. So I think it's just music, pop culture, and that generation, that's what they idolize. And I mean, now what do we have? We have, you know, Instagram and I mean, whatever, YouTube. So we're also all the young kids today. I mean, they all want to be Ken Block or I don't know, uh, Drift Kings. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious about the muscle car aspect because
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, all the Fast and Furious car production cars in the movie all got shipped to a private owner in Scandinavia. Like,
I believe it. There's warehouses of, I mean, there's shops that only cater to USA cars. There's a huge, I don't know if you read Speed Hunters, but there's a giant underground race scene on the streets, and but they do it in plain sight, literally on a three-lane highway. You just stop and they start a drag strip, and it's like common knowledge almost. I mean, mind you, the locations where they start with isn't common knowledge. You need to be on the Facebook invite or whatever it is they do now. But so there's a huge drag scene here, both legal and illegal. Yeah, it's fascinating.
being having so few Corollas over there, what I know we talked a little bit about this before, but the price of cars and parts, or even the availability for you over there, how's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a premium. I mean, in a way, prices for some cars seem relatively good here for cars because there's not such a huge market and demand for it. But then again, with the internet, people know what they got, you know? So, I mean, things are worth what they're worth. But yes, as far as parts, I basically only buy parts from, you know, the top 3 to 6, 7 known Corolla centric or Toyota centric shops, and that includes stuff in the Bay Area, New Zealand, Ireland. We all know the shop names because I want to support what they are encouraging. But sure, like if you need like a gasket or a grommet, I mean, you could just find something at a regular parts store. But so I am paying a premium for shipping and import charges, but it kind of comes with it. Uh,
I know what I wanted to ask you about muscle cars now. So
yeah, go ahead.
what are what are what's it like owning a car there or a modified car there as far as like law enforcement? Do you guys have emissions inspection? What is that like?
So with a car that's over 30 years old, you no longer need to pay any tax for it. And then uh, I think it's also after 30 years, you need to have it certified, or I don't know, in Germany it's called TÜV. So every 2 years I need to go and they check are the lights working, they put it on a lift, they do all that. Um, I haven't had any issues at all. You're not supposed to have an engine swap. You know, you're supposed to remain the same weight to power ratio and things like that. But then if you don't, you could just register your car and or you register your car with those updates and then it's fine. Basically, the older the car, the more okay it is because let's face it, it's a death trap.
Oh
Uh,
man.
you know, kind of.
Yeah, I know.
But when a car reaches 50 years old, it's a free for all. They don't check anything ever. You don't need to ever go and look at anything. You're basically driving a sofa. You know, it's like it is what it is. And I know for a fact because I have friends which have newer cars, and it's so if a car is newer than 1998, you have much more problems because basically your car came with an airbag. You cannot have a steering wheel without an airbag in it. and so there is years that are way more strict. I don't know what those years are, but generally it's been a-okay. They're basically checking if the car is road legal, and that's just safe. I think. But then again, my car is not obnoxiously modified or low or whatever it is. But I'm sure guys have a huge problem if they are, huge turbos, huge motors. I don't know, super low scraping. I mean, I'm sure they get problems from the police. I've never had any issues with anything.
So opposite end of the spectrum, what if I had one of those cars, like a very low stance stretch wheel car with like an open turbo dump pipe? What do those people
Yeah,
do?
people love that. They drive it illegally. No one pull. I mean, I don't know. I don't see police on a daily basis. It's very generally chill. I mean, so that's one thing. It's getting pulled over. I mean, it's not like the car's going to implode if you drive it. It's you. I'm sure you get in trouble if you get pulled over, but you could just say you're driving to your friend's shop to get it fixed. I mean, or at least that's what I would say. But people have them. So there's something called registered certification, and that's like I said, you go and you state all the things that have been upgraded on your car, and it's basically, from what I understand, you're registering your car no longer what the car used to be. You're registering it as a whole different car, and it becomes like a one-off build, and then there's a whole list of criteria that you have to probably the cage needs this diameter tubing and at this section. So there's a whole different thing. And that's how these guys are driving, full on drag cars on the street with a license plate still, or rally cars or whatever it is. So
It's
there
in,
is ways around it. I think it's doing the research, common sense. I mean, being lucky, absolutely. I mean, I've had luck. I've made friends with a few certification guys. So I mean, you're going there with essentially a hot rod classic car. You would hope you get some sympathy. I drive my car like single digit times a year or a season. It's not like I'm commuting 30,000 miles a year in it or something. So yeah.
it's interesting to hear that the older a vehicle is, the seems like easier it is for ownership, which is completely opposite of what California is right now.
Yeah, I'm hearing that and I'm understanding that. And it's the same for Japan, isn't it? Which is so ironic because you're actually driving these cars less and you're fueling the industry with money. We're pump, these are hobby cars. It's so ridiculous that it's the opposite.
You made a really good point about how these being hobby cars actually fuels the economy. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
first time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it fuels our hearts, our cars, and the economy, right? You could put that on a billboard. Absolutely.
Yeah. You brought up Speed Hunters. So Speed Hunters is where I first kind of got a glimpse of Scandinavian car culture. And it makes sense why over there they love those like old Volvo bricks for more than one reason, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very popular here. BMW engine swapped Volvos, Saabs. I mean, everything. Mercedes wagons, S chassis. So BMW motor swaps are very popular here. I don't know the exact names, but M50, M60, I don't know. They're monsters, definitely. And actually, so those that don't know, the Speed Hunters did originate here in Stockholm. So there is an office. That's where EA Games is. Speed Hunters is what started as a blog to develop the hype and develop the uh, not knowledge, but yeah, I guess information on modified car culture, etc. By Rod Chung, which now lives in LA. But anyway, so Speed Hunters does have an office here in Stockholm, and that's kind of where it started.
What sort of driving do you do with your Corolla over there? Like, do you guys have like do you guys have circuits that you guys can go to?
Yeah, there's a lot of airport situations with like, what's it called? Autocross, pylons and stuff. There's local tracks, so there's numerous tracks like within, if you want to say 2 hour drive, there's a few tracks you could choose from. There's like drift tracks. There's like proper tracks with apexes, like in quite a small one, so it would fit to, in my opinion, lower horsepower cars. There's a big track, which is like a longer straights. So there's a number of, yeah, I think it's well equipped driving tracks here. But I'm driving mainly, I mean, to like forest roads. I'm driving between, I mean, between running errands basically. I got a young family. It's quite busy, so I actually haven't been able to go to the track yet. But I'm definitely interested in doing that. But yeah, so I'm driving mainly in forest roads. They usually the roads are really well paved here, so you could have a forest road which is like spaghetti. It's not mountainous, so that's one thing we don't really have here or in this area. So I mean, there is a hills, or I don't know how to say it, but so it's not flat. But yeah, so forest and like country roads which are twisty and so forth.
One other thing we talked about beforehand is there's some 4AG specialists in Finland, and you called them gritty old race dogs. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah, gritty old race dogs. I mean, yeah, that's just what I feel they are. I mean, there's any number of. I mean, in UK and Ireland is also. I mean, there's a lot of love and passion for twin cam engine 4AG. Um, and from I have had some contact with uh, these Finnish companies that are rebuilding engines or T50 transmissions, with sequential boxes. They're taking they could take your what's it called, the tunnel, the transmission. They will they cut it up, re-weld it, put it in a dog box. They'll do it. So I mean, there's a long history of rallying in Finland, especially. So yeah, actually, I don't know where I was going with that, but there's a lot of history. There's a lot of old dudes in sheds building screaming four-cylinder engines, be it 4AG, Ford Motors, so Cosworths, uh, Volvo, what have you. So there's a lot of knowledge underneath the I don't know, the first layer of car culture that's not really, these shops maybe don't even have great websites, but there's a lot of shops that exist. I think it's more word of mouth, and it's the older generations have been rallying since, I mean, before we were born, or when we were younger. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to hear like these guys are of the older generation because I can only think, time moves so fast and like this knowledge or like this generation's stories is going to be lost.
I know, and yeah, I I think about that a lot actually. And actually, I was going to ask you. I mean, have you been to Japan? Do you want to visit, or have you visited these legendary 86 shops? I mean, both that are known and lesser known. I mean, I'm assuming they have younger entrepreneurs like yourself over there, but is there? I mean, there's so much knowledge to be yeah, A, learned from, but then B, carried through and passed on to other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not been to Japan, unfortunately. And I mean, I'm glad you bring this up because in the future, I probably need to think about doing like a Japan tour and just, documenting as much knowledge as I can because like the Corolla scene is still very active over there. And
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. I mean, just go on Yahoo auctions, you could buy any part, basically. I mean, when you see track day or drift event photos, there's loads of them in all conditions. And although like again, websites might some are existing, some are not. I mean, there's loads of shops that I'm still learning that they do this little bracket. That means they probably have been tracking the car for 20 years that there's no information about really, but it's there.
Yeah, one thing interesting about Japan, that's probably the one place I can think of that it's still feasible to own a one make shop. So there's plenty of Corolla only shops, even small shops in Japan right now.
Yeah, I wish that was everywhere. That's why I really appreciate what you're doing, actually.
Oh, well, thank you. I really try my best. And then same thing with this podcast is like to be able to, similar to what you've done locally, is bring the owners together and then also to learn and be able to document this information and these stories for everyone to hear so that they don't just get lost, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I mean, there's the fact documentation is a good way of putting it. And we all know how information goes on Facebook feeds or Instagram feeds. I tend to take a screenshot whenever I read something interesting, because if you like turn around and take a sip of coffee, you go back to your phone, that it's updated, it's refreshed, that site or that page you're on. I mean, I'm on like thousands of car pages. It's been updated. Okay, maybe not websites, but on your phone, it tends to update ridiculously quick. So if you don't screenshot something or write it down, you're gonna forget what you saw. It's just everything is so quick. So there's immediate information, but not documented information, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think, one of the common themes that we keep, that podcast guests keep talking about is sometime soon we've got to bridge this gap between social, so like Facebook groups, and also how the forums are. We got to somehow bridge this gap where where it becomes a library of information. Right.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's scary because by the time we start, there will be something else, and it's going to be even better than the previous. But in the end, it just needs to be done in some way. I mean, forums have been a go-to for how many years? 20? I mean, and they still exist, but they're shattered. They're broken links. And I mean, I know some forums are active, and I still check sometimes just because it's good information's on there. But yeah, somehow it needs to be updated. Yeah.
One of the Going back a topic, one other thing I wanted to bring up about Finland. Do you know that I've been working pretty closely with Martellius?
That's right, and I mean that's also like I have definitely like a strong bookmark in my browser with those guys over there. Um, yeah, how's that?
So the small
First of
number.
all,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
First
Go
of all,
ahead. Go ahead.
how did that come to play? I mean, how did you guys connect? I mean, you saw they have Corolla interest, or I mean, yeah, how did that happen?
It took a long time, and it was a. I would guess you could say I was at the right place at the right time. So
Right, like yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but when Battle Garage released the very first Group A header, it didn't quite fit correctly.
Right. I mean, I've read posts, I've read links, and I've read stuff not working at the beginning. I mean, like it does. I mean, there's a billion factors to anything.
Yeah. So after that, Battle Garage contracted me out when Martellius was going to build the Group A XL header, because they wanted to make sure, like, when we release this product this time, we want to make sure 100% it fits, because we don't want to make
Yeah,
that mistake again. So
absolutely.
yeah, so that's how it got started. Was Battle Garage contracted me out to do the like the R&D and the fitment, the final fitment on that Group A XL header.
Right, right.
Yeah, and
I
then
mean, super.
uh huh.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, how cool is that? It's like across the oceans, companies collaborating to make such a specific part for such a specific car. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that I learned from the that Group A fitment is that, so Grant from Battle Garage was telling me they actually do not have a left-hand drive Corolla in Finland to test fit with. and that was the issue.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but okay, well, then shit, that discredits what I thought. But then, I mean, that's really, yeah. I mean, I'm on some Facebook groups of Corolla owners and Toyota owners. I mean, crazy. So maybe there isn't as many as I thought. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
That's
maybe they mean one that's like easily accessible. Cause
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
maybe. Sure. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
I imagine like there might be some guy who has one, but he's like, no, don't touch my car, right?
Yeah, 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 sure, sure,
Yeah,
exactly. Or he lives way out in the middle of nowhere. It's not, so it's like as accessible as any car would be. Yeah,
yeah,
with shipping in a container.
exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
So that's
super,
basically how
super
it got.
interesting.
Yeah. So that's basically how it got started. And then just recently, just last year, when I really started to work on the YouTube channel, I just took it upon myself to help out Battle Garage and do reviews on the Martellius products.
Yeah,
And I
and
guess, yeah,
those are really really great because I find, you buy products, you basically read the descriptions. I don't know. I don't have, like I told you, there's like three Corolla owners in my 100 kilometer radius. I don't necessarily have. You can't ask them if, what the product's like. So it's I rely on what I read off the internet basically, and ideally it's from someone you want to hear the information from. So I think it's really useful.
oh, I appreciate it. And likewise, I completely understand from like a consumer's point of view. There's three different headers, three different catback exhausts. Like, really, what's the difference? And it's tough. Like, I really want to see and touch them side by side, right? But you can only do so much over the internet.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Grant and Battle Garage. So I actually have the annex suspension coilovers on my car, and I know you've had your hand in that, and there's a lot of things I've read about it and so forth. Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that up. So,
yeah,
how's the annex coilovers been for you?
yeah, super good. I mean, the car at the same time as those went in, a bunch of other stuff got upgraded suspension wise, lower control arms and new bushings throughout. But basically, the car, it's super like stable in a good way. It's taking up all the bumps and so forth, and it's way more predictable than it was before. I mean, before I think I had the previous owner. It was just the TRD shocks or TRD springs, and then like super old, like vintage ones, but by now. So it was really squeaky, and you could just feel things are a bit tired. But yeah, now it's. I mean, I've had it in for 2 years now, so I've been putting some miles on it. Yeah, it's super compliant, and but without being yeah, too soft or too hard. It's really, yeah, really easy to adjust and maintain and so forth. I'm super pleased, and of course the communication. What I was going to get to also. Grant. I mean, I know Grant. I mean, not as a good best friend or anything, but I know him. I messaged with him several times. I mean, I love the communication globally between companies that are really into doing these parts for these cars, and also people that have no relation to any company. The communication is so good, I think.
Well, first of all, I'm really glad you're happy with that product. I don't remember if I saw when your order went out, but I remember you shot me a DM on Instagram about,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. And I was just like,
I,
oh
I,
man.
I haven't posted because I think, yeah, we follow each other on Instagram. I haven't posted that update, even though it was taken out, but I will do it soon. Yeah, everything feels so personable. I mean, I love that.
Yeah, if you have any, feel free. I feel like I've been talking a lot, so feel free. If you have any
No, no.
questions for me, also, yeah, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, so Annex, Martellius, I know now you're doing the like vintage air stuff. I mean, do you have any other like thoughts or ideas what you'd like to, I mean, would you like to develop product? I mean, I have a list of products I've thought about to develop for the Corolla. I mean, I'm an industrial designer by profession, so I can't help but want to improve things. And I mean, I there's like you said, there's some parts are no longer available. Um, but we still managed to get some, whether they're new or used, from auction sites or from word of mouth. I mean, do you feel, would you like to have a line of products or keep maybe, I mean, you don't want to be wearing a suit and selling products all day. You want to be hands-on, but yeah, is there any other stuff that you want to do? I guess I'm answering my own question. I mean, vintage air is something you're in right now.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about more about vintage air, but as far as like parts or product, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I would like for Toyota to start making reproduction parts for the Corolla again.
Yeah, do you think that will happen? I mean, other car brands, it's happened or happening, I guess. I mean, I read it. I don't know. I don't know firsthand has it happened, but what's it called the Z cars or the what R32? I don't know. I mean, the MX-5. You could buy a new MX-5, right? They will build you one from if you bring yours in. I mean, I hope Toyota. It would be. You would think by now they would start remanufacturing some stuff.
Yeah. Next, this tomorrow's, or I guess tomorrow for me, tomorrow's podcast, I'm actually, there's an engineer from Toyota on the podcast, and he talks about some ways that as a consumer, we can influence big car companies to suit our needs. So look forward to listening to that. But that's why I'm
Oh,
optimistic.
that
Yeah.
yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, even just simple parts from brackets. I mean, fog lamps for the guys that like Levins. I mean, left-hand drive dashboards. I mean, it doesn't have to be maybe mechanical parts, but there's so many small bits and nibs. I mean, carpet. I see carpets go for sale for hundreds of dollars. It looks like something in your grandma's attic. I don't know why on earth you'd want to buy a super old carpet. You could just buy a new roll, or I mean, I actually bought new carpet from a remanufacturer that's heat pressed. I mean, there's so many parts which are maybe not super difficult quotation marks to make that would make sense for Toyota. I think. I mean, I'm a consumer, but I'm not a manufacturer. But that there would be a lot of interest. But perhaps I don't know. We have to start petitions or putting on down our deposits, $50 for a new dashboard or whatever it is. Maybe. I mean, in the end, it's just numbers. Businesses make things because it makes financial sense generally.
And yeah,
So they
that's,
need to know a market exists.
yes. And letting the manufacturer know that this market exists, that was definitely a big part of what the discussion I had with the engineer. So
Yeah,
like he told me Toyota is actively out there looking, right? Like they'll look on social, they'll look at forums to see, for example, if I have this Toyota truck, all these Toyota truck owners are adding all these like auxiliary switches. All of a sudden it could be like,
yep,
maybe we need to add all these extra outlets in the new Tacoma next year. So that
yeah,
kind of stuff
yeah,
is really happening. And I would hope that all of us can play a little bit of a role, right? So, I mean, give you an example. If the Autohaus podcast became the number one automotive podcast, Toyota would probably, I'd probably be a
Start,
blip on
yeah,
Toyota's radar. Like, what is this?
yep,
What is this Toyota Corolla podcast? Why is there so much interest in this chassis? Small
yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. That's yeah. I think that's you put it right. Like the consumer has quite a lot of play in it. I mean, in the end, it's to be on the right radar, make create attention for the right people, and yeah, things can progress from there. I mean, let's hope. Or I mean, you're doing the right thing. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, so for instance, so my 11 JDM grill that I put together. So the grill itself is bought in Ireland, new. The fog lamps were a separate purchase, and then the fog lamp brackets were also a separate purchase. The fog lamp brackets, I had to restore them. They were completely rusty, so I had to like make my own Lego puzzle piece to get one kit together. Mind you, that's half of the fun to make things the way you want them. and have things, and it's fun to sandblast stuff and powder coat and uh, find these items, but you could also imagine it being to a total sense for them to create a kit. You want a fog lamp, you want this kit, here's a kit. So it makes it easier for those that don't have time or, I don't know, resources to do their own research. I mean, that's okay. When I'm speaking, it sounds a bit sad because that's part of having a vintage car, I think. But I think you know what I mean. I mean, eventually there will be no fog lamp brackets to buy, or you know, uh, there's limited number of these products out there left, basically.
Yeah. No, I completely know what you mean. Like for some people who own vintage cars, half the fun is like the treasure hunt and the restoration. But
Yeah,
like especially in the Bay Area, I've noticed
yeah.
that because it's so tough to financially survive, a majority of people just spend majority of their time working, that a lot of owners actually do not have that time to have the fun of a treasure hunt, or or have the
I
fun
mean,
of like doing
it,
restoration.
that's also understandable. I mean, we everyone is in their own circumstance, and I mean, also garage spaces. I mean, I've only heard about Bay Area, super difficult here as well. I mean, I have to pull my jack like 300 meters from a storage into my garage spot. I can't have any parts outside of my car. So whenever I need to do something, I need to, there's a lot of logistics in play, and that's perhaps why I can't do certain maintenance or certain uh, items on my car. And same with time. Some people absolutely do not have the time. Luckily, I happen to do so. I think it's part of, or I enjoy the research process. And yeah, I mean, everyone is in their own, I don't want to say shit, but in their own circumstance, which, yeah, some people, yeah, you have to pay for, I mean, they're able to afford a car and they don't have the time to do, yeah, this
Yeah.
treasure hunt, like you said.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like more and more people want a comprehensive kit. And I think part of that too, I'm sorry to say, but as time goes on, I think people get a little more lazy too. That's also part of it.
I mean, that's just, I mean, I think it's a shame, but maybe that's a generation thing. It's like, or it's its personality type. I mean, DIY is everything I believe in. Maybe you too. And yeah, just everyone's different, and we're okay to like what we like, and they're okay to like what they like, and just that's that. I mean, if I had the resources and money, I'd be Jay Leno. Maybe I would hire some TRD race mechanics and have them restore, all the chassis I love and I grew up idolizing. So it all depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, because we have a Battle Garage customer who I'll keep him anonymous, but yeah, he shipped his car over to Tech Arts to get a refresh. So
Oh, that's so. I mean, I love that happened. I mean, believe me, I've been researching. I would love to have Tech Cards build me a motor, or there's another race shop, a little bit lesser known in the like spotlight. I think it's called not Nayakaman Racing. I don't know. I mean, it's basically all the shops that are racing, from what I understand, in the N2 one make series. A lot of them are shops. So I have them on Instagram. I mean, I would love one of these shops to build me a motor one day. But to ship your car over, I mean, yeah, that's real. Yeah, that's commitment. But in a way, it's part of the car story. I think it is interesting. I think that's inspiring, really.
yeah. And then sorry, I derailed you off the topic you wanted to ask me. You want to ask me questions about vintage
No,
air?
no. I mean, I'm not particularly. I mean, I live in Sweden. We have winter for like 6 to 8 months. So I mean, I'm not hyped on the product per se, but just in general, the development and releasing kits. I mean, it's super interesting to learn about and hear about, and also just see the process that you're going through, because, yeah, it helps you learn about things, and I mean, helps me know more about my own car. So anyway, so yeah, the vintage air is currently your next sort of endeavor in being involved in a some kind of product.
Yes, and this is probably the deepest dive I've done so far because I essentially took the month off of June to essentially roll the dice and do development for this drop-in product.
That's fantastic. I mean, this will snowball into a next one. I don't know what part of the car, but I think it's just it will just create, yeah, you will dive into another part of the car, which is super interesting. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I could ask a little bit about engines. I mean, what is the beams, the new blacktop in America? I mean, I see a lot of beams motors in the US for cars for sale and so forth. Just at your opinion, I mean, you've been around these cars for how many years? You've seen it all by now.
Oh, not you're too kind. I actually have not seen it all, but yeah, talking with podcast guests from around the world, the US is peculiar in this regard in that it seems like beam swap is only really popular here. Throughout the rest of the
Yeah,
world, it seems like 16 valve and 20 valve is still predominantly the popular options.
yeah, and just to like comment, old race dogs, they're very 16 valve. I think 16 valve is the thing for racing. Something about more ribs, less ribs. I don't know, more stronger motors. But I see beams being very popular in the States. So yeah, you think it's only the States? Yeah.
So I had a Chaden from the UK, the Corolla Brotherhood, and
Yep.
one reason that it's not popular in the UK, I guess the engine and gearbox is still relatively expensive over there. So
Right.
that's one thing in the
But
US. Yeah, the engine and gearbox is like essentially disposable cheap out here to get a beams. So
wow, yeah, I mean that's amazing. Oh, I remember what I was going to ask you, and maybe this is basic information, but you got the Impulse J160 transmission, or no, was it ZN6 adapter? Is
yes,
that correct?
yes.
So tell me, the ZN6, and tell me if that's wrong, the wrong code, but is that, I mean, that's just the newest generation of the J160, right? Or
Kind of, and
because yeah, sorry, continue. Yeah.
yeah, so in the beginning and when before the the sorry, I'm American, so I'm gonna say ZN6. So
Z, go. No, it's good. Yeah.
I wonder if overseas they call me Autohaus Z.
Yeah, yeah. You
um
can make a poll.
yeah. Anyway, so before the ZN6 got released, and then even now, there's still some confusion that the old J160 and the Altezza, they classified that as the AZ6 ASIN transmission, I think. And so,
Okay.
yeah, before the ZN6 got released, they thought it was just going to be the same 6 speed that was in the Altezza. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, having opened up both transmission, the architecture is almost like how the how the gears are laid out. All that architecture is like eerily similar, right? You could tell they took the old design and were like trying to make improvements, arguably.
Right.
But man, I know people ask me about this. I would say J160 is definitely the J160 and the Altezza. It's definitely the stronger transmission. I was really disappointed with the ZN6 6 speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me, yeah, how and why. And that's currently in your car, right? In your private car.
No, so that's in Grant's race car right now.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so
I
there's a
okay.
story behind why it's in Grant's car too.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why I think it's not as strong, and then but first of all, Grant's car. So
Yep. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, go.
that impulse kit, you actually have to cut a big hole in the tunnel because the shifter is so far back,
Right.
and so that was the thing is like I didn't want to cut that hole.
Yeah. I hear
Um,
you.
but Grant's car is actually like when he bought that thing, it was pretty close to just going to the salvage yard. So in his words, he's like, "Hey, I essentially gave this car like a second lease on life." So it's
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
I understand.
he's okay with like leaving this car a little rougher as a track car. So he
Yeah, yeah.
He gave me the okay to cut the big hole. And
That's good. That's what progresses. Yeah, interesting findings. Yeah.
yeah, and for me personally, it wasn't like I I bought the reason I bought this kit was because like I wanted to continue development for this chassis, and then also just intrinsically I enjoy just learning, right? Like if there's a newest
Yep.
transmission
Yep.
option out there, I want to do it, I want to see it, and I want to build
Yeah.
it, I want to
Yeah.
touch it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In regards to strength and I guess functionality of the new ZN6 transmission, yeah, there's something up with this one. Like I don't know if the metallurgy for the gears, they cut cost on it or what, but definitely the metallurgy of the gears is, I mean, poor in my opinion for being a modern car.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
this, if the synchronizer design is also not up to par. I don't really. I have a few videos on our YouTube channel describing some of the issues with like the synchronizer design, but yeah,
Right.
definitely a disappointing
No,
transmission for being a modern car.
wow. I mean, they say they don't make things like they used to. It's yeah, they're cutting costs on everything, just generally on life, right? Things are not as sturdy, I think, as they used to be. And maybe that's part of it. Like you said, you were trying to find differences between the transmissions, and it wasn't blatantly obvious. They reused some things, they kind of maybe compromised on this material or this tolerance, and all of a sudden it's not as crispy as you would have hoped for, which is a shame.
Yeah, you nailed it exactly. Probably cutting costs on tolerance and materials. That's probably the biggest
Yeah,
reason these transmissions. I mean, the car itself doesn't make a whole lot of power, but still, um, plenty of ZN6 owners have complaints about the transmission with the car in factory trim, just as a street car too. So
yeah, yeah. No, I mean it would be annoying. I mean, I happen to have not. I happen to not have a center console. I just have like I made like it's just a carpet with a hole, so I wouldn't have a problem with that particular like trim. But yeah, I feel you. I mean, people have nice complete interiors. It would be annoying to just gouge a hole in the center. But the regular transmission, I mean, the J160 fits with some modification to the 4A. Is that correct? Or maybe I got it also incorrect.
um so I got mine to fit with some strategic parts and some strategic modification. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm using Sam's the SQ Engineering J160 kit.
Right. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. I
So
remember. I remember
mhm.
now. I saw that. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
the very first, I think the biggest key is the Cusco engine mounts, because the Cusco mounts sit everything lower than factory mounts.
Okay.
So that was the first like strategic part. And then because that Altezza bell housing is physically very large, you actually have to clearance out strategic areas of that bell housing if you don't want to
Right.
modify your trans tunnel. And the last thing I did, I didn't, bash the trans tunnel, but rather it's not a flat piece of metal. There's like ribs in the trans tunnel. So I
Right.
think it's been a long time, but I think it's just like the first two ribs I hammered flat. So
Right.
yeah, to give me clearance. So you can get away with it, like minimal modification to the body to get that J160 to fit.
Right. I mean, it's a the reason I ask a little bit more about it is just that I see that as a potential contender. They're available here. I mean, just like most countries maybe, but there's any at any given time there's like a dozen for sale. So it's definitely appealing. The T50. I'm not sure if it's if I haven't really looked, but like I said, the Corolla was never sold here, but it comes with in other cars, but a six speed would be interesting in a Corolla, I think.
Yeah, I would say the biggest advantage to that transmission is that other manufacturers use the same transmission. So MX-5
Yeah,
Miata, RX-8, S15 Sylvia, and then yeah, Toyota Altezza. So you have three different manufacturers and four or five different cars that came with that transmission. And
yeah, that's Yeah, plenty.
Yeah, and like part of the that advantage is that for a lot of Toyota stuff, like even if you have a ZN6, like the Toyota alternatives usually, in my experience, more expensive than the Subaru alternative. I don't know why Toyota is so expensive with all their stuff, but
Yeah,
so
interesting.
yeah,
Different. They got a different cut at the manufacturer.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the reason I say that is because a lot of the parts that I use to build my Toyota J160, I actually bought Nissan parts because it was like half the
yeah,
price
man.
of Toyota parts. So
It makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's only makes sense to do that. Yeah,
so yeah, Martin, we've been having too much fun that we're over
man.
our
I could go.
yeah.
Yeah, I could go forever. I could kill your bandwidth. I mean, the thing is, it's 9 a.m. here. I got my backpack on me. I'm gonna go buy a coffee. I mean, I'm about to start my day, but you're gonna go to sleep, I guess.
Yeah, pretty soon I'm at the shop, so still gotta clean up and drive home. But regardless, Martin, I want to thank you so much for your time setting up to be on the podcast, and I mean all your support for the Corolla community. Yeah, man, I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely, and likewise. I mean, you're really. I look forward to the podcast every week, and yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. I'd love to visit you one day. Actually, I was in the Bay Area a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure if you were set up yet. But random street, I walked down and I saw Toyota Auto Clinic. Is that a shop?
Oh
I guess
yes, 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 yes.
I was on a work trip. I just like walked down a random street. I was at a Motel 6. I walk and there's two SR5s outside, a Mango with F20, and I stay there like an hour to talk to the shop owner. Like, long story short, I'm not sure if you were open up yet because you weren't on my radar a couple of years ago. So it would be lovely to visit you in person.
Yeah, if you're ever in the Bay Area, please let us know.
Yeah,
We'll give you the grand tour. And yeah, Toy
absolutely.
Auto Clinic, man, what a small world. So Brian and Chris are the owners of Toy Auto Clinic, very good friends of mine. So what a
Yeah,
small world,
wicked.
man.
And at that time I was like 6 months into my ownership of the Corolla, and I was already looking for miscellaneous parts. And started talking to them, and they gave me. I asked them for some. I was looking for some interior trim, or I wanted like a full all the screws used for the interior, whatever it was, grommets. And he said he doesn't have a particular, but then he gave me a phone number to someone, which I had them on Instagram already. And then I called him and like we started chatting. We didn't end up meeting up, but like just small world. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, man, that's just crazy. These quirky cars bring us internationally all together.
It's wonderful.
But yeah, man, thank you so much again. And then please let me know if I'd love to have you on again.
Absolutely. Oh, it would be an absolute honor. Have a good night. And yeah, dude, keep up the good work. We'll be in touch.
Awesome. Sounds good. I appreciate it, Martin. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.